Okay, so what am I supposed to be? The chisel dude or the dad bod dude?
Yeah. Every time you see yourself in the mirror or you try on those pants and they're too tight, a picture of someone, they're like, you haven't aged a day. It can be so easy to compare.
Yeah.
And instead of being, God, thank you
Yeah.
for this,
Right.
you can be like, oh, why don't I have that?
Yeah. Greetings.
Welcome back. Welcome to the We Can Talk About This
We can
podcast.
talk about this podcast.
We can.
Yes.
And Jonathan Threlfall,
Yes, Krista.
what are we talking about today?
I think we're talking about health, body image, exercise, some topics related to that.
Yeah.
Maybe our existence as embodied beings. Not to get too philosophical about it, but to celebrate. I have M&Ms.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Too. I love
You're gonna
M&Ms.
show the people.
I thought I might, this is a blue one, right? I love M&Ms.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be a good way to talk about
Health.
health.
Yeah, what better way to talk about health than eating M&Ms?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here is why we thought this would be a helpful topic.
Yep.
Is because we're releasing this in the new year.
Yep.
And what are you seeing? What are you seeing?
What am I seeing about
towards men about health?
health, body? Of course, your feed is probably customized toward you.
Yeah.
And you're a woman, so you're seeing health, things related to women. I am seeing a lot of things targeted toward men. So pictures of men with chiseled bodies, especially going into 2023, not so much going into 2024, but there is this motto of how to be totally unrecognizable in the new year.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna have some routines and some diets that are gonna so utterly transform your look. A lot of it had to do not just with body image, but with overall self-discipline and being a triumphant, disciplined, smart, well-read, social sort of person.
Yeah.
But do a lot of body stuff too.
Right.
So there, even more recently, I've seen as kind of a backlash, a pendulum swing against men aren't allowed to be men. Men should kind of apologize for being men. There's this kind of idea. Then there's been this resistance toward like, no, men, you got to be macho, so look strong. And this is so I see even Christian men posting pictures of really well muscled, bearded men as if that is the picture of masculinity. That is what you want to strive for. It's really pervasive. I'm seeing more and more of that.
Yeah, and I see not just ads like from companies, but even my peers who are really involved in, different things they sell or coaching or things like that, fitness programs that they've become coaches with, and even just not on social media or the internet, but just anywhere I look, seems like in magazines, on the grocery store,
Yeah.
or just wherever, it just seems like there's so much targeted towards you need to look this way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you need to look this way, or then sometimes in the same breath, almost, or the same few inches of your news feed, it's okay if you don't look this way.
Yeah.
It's almost this obsession with either way, you have to look this way, or who cares about the way you look. In some cases, there seems to be we're conflicted, I think, as a society, as a culture. Just as a little example, I recently saw an ad for a vacation resort. It was like a husband and a wife with their kid, and the wife was just like perfectly chiseled and in shape, and the dad was like not.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like, the comments were like, way to go, dad bod. Like, it's okay to be that way. This is what having a kid does to you. And it's like, okay, so what am I supposed to be? The chisel dude or the dad bod dude?
Yeah. So that's where this conversation is coming from. That's why we thought, hey, let's start it off with a bang.
Yeah.
M&Ms.
M&Ms. I only have 7.
Yes.
Or 6.
7 left.
I can't even count. Yeah. So I've only eaten one since we started the podcast. So what do we want to say about this? I guess, first of all, what is our body for?
Yes.
Be a good question to begin with. And obviously that goes back to who made our bodies. Our bodies are a result of God's handiwork.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of Genesis, the first chapters of Genesis, where obviously chapter 1 says that God created everything, but then chapter 2 details how God created human beings. He reaches down into the earth. He is almost like an artist, a craftsman. He fashions human beings out of the dust of the ground, breathes into our nostrils the first man's nostrils, the breath of life. And so there's this, the embodied nature of human beings is woven into God's purpose for who we are. We are bodies. It's not an exaggeration to say we're not just spirits inhabiting a body. We are bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to back up just
Okay.
one
Yeah.
second because this is going to be roughly a 30-minute episode, right? That's our
All right.
goal.
All right. That's what we're trying to aim for.
We are not going to cover all of the things in health. So
Oh,
just,
I thought we were, but
just, just, no, you
no.
didn't.
Okay. Okay. No, I didn't. I didn't.
This is just like fly by some things that we thought were helpful.
Yeah.
And we also have some resources that we're going to share at the end as well of things that we've read that have helped us.
Right.
So anyway, that's
Thank you.
all.
I appreciate that because I had a whole list of the different diets to not do and diets to do. So I'm glad you kind of cut me off there, but
Yeah.
got to
Yeah.
keep it. Yeah.
Okay, so going back to that,
Yeah.
that God did create our
Right.
bodies, they're for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that we wanted to talk about is that health is more than just physical.
Right.
So our culture often paints this picture of health, and what they say it is your body looking this way.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading a book recently, it was a memoir, and the author was saying she struggled with bulimia for many, many years. And she was saying she found that it was like a very thin slice where that was considered healthy or considered beautiful. And any part out of that, either direction was not considered beautiful.
I mean, like
But
a very narrow definition
exactly.
of how thin to be, or what the
Of
body
what
body
size,
shape, the body shape.
size to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you were thinner, there was a problem, and if you were larger, there
Yeah.
was a problem.
Yeah.
And she was just saying she struggled with this eating disorder, but everyone was complimenting her on how good she looked.
So it kind of reinforces
Yes.
what her thought. Well, I better stay this shape.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting all the compliments when I'm this shape.
Right. And so even though her physical body looked a certain way, and every other way, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, her body, she was not a picture of health.
Yeah.
So
it makes me wonder whether when people are complimenting her on her body, obviously they mean well.
Yeah.
But do they even care about how she's doing as a person?
Yeah, which I mean, there's a lot that could be said
Sure.
there, honestly, as far as like even talking with each other and complimenting each other's bodies. Is that even a healthy, good thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. Because even doing it in a group, like,
Mm-hmm.
what is that communicating to other people in
Yeah.
a group?
Yeah.
And there's just so much more than the eye can see.
Right. Yeah.
So much more to health than just physical.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's more than your pant size.
Right. More than your pant size, more than whether you have visible abs.
Yes.
Health is, we got to look at the full picture there. So I thought we could also talk about some theological foundations
Yeah.
of body health and body image. I've already referenced Genesis 1 and 2, but I came across some really helpful information from Christopher Watkins' book, Biblical Critical Theory, which I think is an incredible book, has some extremely helpful things, particularly his chapter on the incarnation. So we're recording this podcast before Christmas, but I've been doing a lot of studying on the incarnation, how that Jesus had a body.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is incredibly important for us to understand.
Yeah.
That Jesus had and his body had a particular shape.
Mm-hmm.
He had a body size.
Mm-hmm.
He had a weight. He had, there was, he was fully embodied just like you and I are. So one of the insights that Watkins draws out there is that in our modern world, it is not so much that we are overemphasizing the body. It's not so much that we value the body too much. It's actually we value it too little. Because if you think about it, when people are working out or dieting, it's not the body they're doing it for. It's something non-material. It's the attention. Well, attention's not a body. So to the modern culture, it's actually a very dehumanizing, disregarding the body because it sees the body as a tool to get something else. So now the body's been instrumentalized. It's just a tool, but God actually made the body to be good in itself, not just for what you can get out of it. I think that's just kind of a mind shift.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. That this is one thing And feel free to jump
Yeah.
in here
Yeah.
to interrupt me because I could kind of go off on this. But this is one thing that makes Christianity absolutely unique. And this is the one thing that the early like pagans, when Christianity was exploding on the scene there in the first few centuries, that the pagan philosophers are like, it is unworthy of God to have a body.
Mm-hmm.
And the early Christians, the early apologists had to defend the goodness of God taking on a body,
Mm-hmm.
because Greek thought in particular thought this was utterly unworthy of God to actually be an embodied person. So
Yeah.
I think those are very helpful for me to kind of identify. Oh, it's not that our culture is overemphasizing the body, even though it looks like we are. We're not emphasizing its goodness enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I read a couple books on the body last year, and they were talking about how God, he didn't just create, he created the body, and
Yeah.
that is in itself declaring its goodness,
Yeah.
because he looked at everything he made and said it was good.
Yeah.
But then he came and lived in one.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe you're going to go into this, but that he's going to resurrect our bodies
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not, the body is not bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is good.
Yeah. And
So,
I think of that passage in 1 Timothy 4 when Paul is talking about food. And he
mhm,
actually says there's kind of heresies that tie what it means to be a true flourishing human being with denying yourself of certain foods. And Paul is saying, like, he attributes some of those heresies to the doctrines of demons. He says, actually, everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it is received with thanksgiving. So he
mhm,
ties in the aspect of gratitude. What is
yeah,
gratitude? It's recognizing something as good because it's from a good giver.
yeah,
And that's where he says, it's sanctified by the word of God and prayer.
mhm,
So as we receive these things and as we view the material world, food, our bodies, the things God has made, we have to see them as from God.
yeah,
And when we do that, we see them as good for what they really are. And I think good means not just a perfect body is good. It means my body is good.
yeah,
Your body is good
mhm,
as it truly is, not as I
mhm,
wish it would be, not as I hope it to be at some point in the future, but as it is now.
mhm,
All except for sin and the effects of sin.
mhm, yeah,
Tertullian, I like this quote that I came across in Watkins' book. Christ came in the body, died in the body, was resurrected in the body, and ascended in the body to heaven. Augustine, I like this. Bodies are not an ornament or employed as an external aid. Rather, they belong to the very nature of man. I think
mhm,
maybe we view our bodies as an ornaments. This
mhm,
is a way to this is a way to bring attention to myself.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Can you talk a little more about the resurrection of the bodies? Because remember you were telling me about in your Bible class that you had mentioned, wasn't it this that you had mentioned,
you have to jog my memory a little
and it
bit
seems like some of your students were um kind of disagreeing with you on that,
as far as whether we're going to actually have real bodies.
as far as whether our bodies are going to be resurrected.
Oh, I don't remember that exactly,
Oh yeah,
actually, but I think there
maybe
is.
I dreamed that.
Well, it wouldn't be far off from what actually happened, because it does seem like we conceive of heaven as a disembodied existence.
Yeah.
To think of our actually having bodies,
Mm-hmm.
like physical bodies, it kind of conflicts with this the whole narrative of you trust in Jesus, you get saved so that you can go to heaven when you die, as if salvation has to do with some sort of state after death. Obviously, then you can't even think about a life without the body, so your imagination is just grasping toward something. But the when you read the Bible, you understand that their hope for the afterlife was a thoroughly embodied hope. And but yeah, so 1 Corinthians 15 talks about we need a body. The bodies that we currently have, because of the nature of sin, are deteriorating. They age. They're not. They're obviously not suited to live forever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, God is going to have to transform those bodies so that they can be suited forever. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, which is why we need to be transformed. But yeah, we'll be fully embodied. We'll be recognizable as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Um, so I think one question
Yeah,
that I put something on Instagram where
yeah.
people could ask questions.
Okay, yeah,
One question from there. I might mention at the end, but another was, if are we gonna, some people have the idea that we're gonna be able to choose what our body looks like
Hmm.
at the in heaven.
Mhm.
So being able being able
I
to
wish you had told me about that question before we started.
so
This is totally new.
so what do you think,
Are we going to be
from
able to pick our
scripture?
body?
Yeah, like the idea of, okay, I see a body like that and I want to look like that in heaven. So
Yeah.
what would you say to that?
The first thing that comes to mind is that we will be so grateful in a way that we never had been before for what God has created.
Mhm.
I think that our whole consciousness, our whole awareness will be occupied completely with the goodness of
Yeah,
the giver himself.
right.
So even the very thought of choosing a body would be, I hope, out of our minds.
Yeah,
I don't even think it would occur to us that anything that God has given us is anything less than good.
right.
And so why there would be a choice? Why would I think that I could choose anything that would be better than what God has already in His goodness chosen for me?
Mhm.
Um, I think I think we'll have a completely different perspective on those things.
Yeah.
I also recognize that there is both continuity and discontinuity between our bodies as they are and our bodies as they will be. Paul says that he likens it to be the difference between a seed that goes into the ground and the plant that comes out of it. And so I think that it's hard to tell exactly how does that translate into shape and size. And um, Jesus, his resurrection body was a real body.
Mhm.
He said, give me fish to eat. And he ate fish. It didn't just pass through him, but he passed through walls. So his relationship to the material universe was somehow different than ours is now.
Yeah.
And yet he had a body just like we do. Like
Yeah.
not just like we do, but he was embodied, his physical
Mhm.
body.
I
Uh,
think also, like, when we're in heaven, so many things that we experience and value here on earth the former things are going to pass away.
yeah.
And our gaze, our vision is not going to be taken with, wow, have you seen this person and
Mhm.
how good they
Right.
look?
Right.
They're unrecognizable.
Yeah.
It's our vision is going to be taken with Christ,
Right. Yeah.
and worshiping him. So
Yeah.
it almost seems like that can be taking the values we have here on earth and trying to also bring them to heaven, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
not going to be the case.
Yeah. And at the same time, I don't think we'll lose any bit of individuality or
Mhm.
uniqueness. I think our distinctness will be finally realized for
Yeah.
what it should be. Instead of trying to submit ourselves to the conformity of having a certain kind of body, I think we'll, in the purest sense, be proud of the bodies we have.
Mm.
In the absolute purest sense of pride that doesn't have any hint of superiority,
Yeah.
only glories in the giver.
Mm. That's an interesting thought. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else you wanted to cover with the theological
I,
part of the body?
I think one other thing I did want to mention is that we have this almost perverse craving for the idealized body. Several months ago, when there was this app out where you can idealize your face or your body, it looked perfect. It was flawless, and yet somehow you. And people started changing their profile pictures for that. And I could understand. I mean, I thought about doing it myself because it was so cool. It was like,
Yeah.
wow, it's incredible. I first started asking myself the question, how are all my friends on Facebook looking so good? I mean, they look incredible. But I think even that somehow undermined the goodness of who they are
Mm.
for themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's just another, I think, evidence of our dissatisfaction with ourselves. And that dissatisfaction comes, I think, from a couple directions. One is that we do live in a fallen, broken universe in which bodies age
Yeah.
and there's deformities and there's a dissonance between what our bodies are and what our feelings are. I get that, right? But it also comes out from a fundamental dissatisfaction that lurks in our hearts with the way God has made us to be.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, that's good. So we also want to talk about dangers,
yes.
with the body and kind of, let's see,
Dangers with the
health.
health in the body. So what would some,
Dangers with how we view the body,
yeah.
with how we think about it.
So what do you see as some dangers?
Yeah. So what we were thinking, and you've probably heard this before, this is not original with us, but just how we can tend to look at the body as either the ultimate good
Hmm.
or as bad.
Right.
And we already talked about that a
Yeah.
little bit, but having a gaze or a value that pins everything on my body and
Hmm.
how it looks,
Yeah.
um, rather than the creator of
Yeah.
the body.
Yeah.
So, how are some ways that you think we do that?
Uh, some
Looking
we,
at the body as like the ultimate good, or is that
yeah,
not a struggle for you?
I think, I don't know if it's a guy thing or a me thing, or just because.
How could it get any better?
No, I just, no, it's just, I think it's different for guys. I think it's just, it varies from person to person. Um, I'm not a tall person. I think that's one thing I do remember feeling pretty insecure about. Um, especially when I was younger. I think there would be a danger. I read recently of an increasingly popular operation among men to lengthen their legs. It's a kind of a dangerous and painful operation, but that's so valuable to men. So, um, you know,
Yeah,
sure.
I have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, yeah. If you see
Yeah.
me coming in one day with long legs,
I don't
ask
know,
me
it
some
just
serious
seems like
questions.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think we can. It's possible to see, be constantly thinking about your how you are looking to people and how people
Mhm.
are looking at you.
Yeah. Yeah, and even that can be reflected in um not just time,
Hmm.
but what takes up
Mental space, right?
mental
Yeah.
space. And I think you talked with me about this a while ago because it seemed like there was there were times where it was like all I was talking about. And even if it were good things that we're talking about, like trying to be more disciplined in certain areas, and you sort of, I don't know, confronted me about that. What'd you call it? Confront?
Yeah.
Encouraged
Yeah.
me.
Sure. Yeah. Encourage.
Just like, hey, like these are good things, but how much of your mental space is this taking up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I think asking you too, like, what are your goals? Is your
yeah,
goal really to have a certain size,
right.
or is it just to be a healthy person?
Yeah. Yeah, which I think was a really helpful
Yeah.
question when you asked
Yeah.
me that.
And I think too, like, I love you, and we're married together, and I love your body, and I think that's important for a married couple to keep in mind. But the question then is like, okay, what will it take to be to accept myself? I think
Yeah.
that's a challenge.
Which I think kind of goes back to what you talked about earlier, as far as valuing the body.
Hmm.
Is it really valuing your body when you're doing
Hmm.
extreme dieting or other things like that, or is it valuing
Something beyond the body.
something beyond
Right.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, like your acceptance or
Yeah.
how other people view you,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
yeah, things
I
like
wonder
that.
if we really loved people's, I know this sounds weird, but loved people's bodies as themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus touched people.
Yeah.
It's not like he just waved his hands to heal them.
Right.
There was physical contact,
Mm-hmm.
and he saw inherent good in people's bodies as creation, as a part of God's creation.
Yeah.
And even the way he treated, I'll just as a side note, even the way he treated the other things in creating, he said, consider the birds. Look
Yeah.
at the birds. Look at the flowers. So he's always pointing to things that God had created as good.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's important not to look at the body as the ultimate good.
Hmm.
Um, but also it's important not to look at it as something bad,
Right.
and to view it as this is something from my good God.
Yeah.
James 1:17, every good gift and every perfect gift comes from the Father of the heavenly lights.
Yes.
And so the even my body with everything about it and even its limitations
Hmm.
is a good gift from God.
Yeah.
And so looking at our bodies and even looking at food.
Yeah.
We were talking about
That's
this
true. Yeah.
this the other day, that it's so important to look at food and view it as this is a good gift from
Yeah.
God. And I think in our society it can be so easy. We have such an abundance of food in America, and it can be so easy to look at certain foods as bad.
Hmm.
And instead of accepting food as the good gift from God that it is, instead we approach it with shame
Right.
or with guilt
Yeah.
or like all of these
Yeah.
other thoughts except for gratefulness.
And I think some of that is self-inflicted.
Mhm.
Is if we've always used a particular kind of food as self-medicating
Mhm.
or a coping mechanism, it's hard to look at that in another way other than the shameful way in which I used it.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that we can probably harm ourselves in that way by treating food in a way that ought not to have been treated. And now we can't look at it the same way.
Yeah.
Um, so what I know this might be take more than the time we have left, but what advice would you have, since you're a woman, to another woman who may be listening and really struggling with her body image and
Mhm.
just feeling deeply discontent and conflicted about that? What would you tell her?
Well, there's so many different ways you can struggle with body image.
Yeah. You-
So I don't know if there's like just a total one size fits
Yeah.
all answer, but a couple things that came to mind. Um, 2 Corinthians 5 talks about the love of Christ controlling us because Christ died for all,
Mm-hmm.
and why? It's so that those who live wouldn't live for
Mm-hmm.
themselves, but live for the one who died for
That's
them.
good.
And so even with thinking about the topic of body image and exercise and eating and all, like, the point of it is for the creator,
Yeah.
for the one who gave you this body, gave me my body,
Yeah.
um so that I wouldn't use it for myself. It's not, it doesn't just end here.
Yeah.
It's a gift that God has given, and I want to use it for him,
Yeah.
but also receive the gift with
Yeah.
gratefulness.
Yeah.
And it can be so easy, like every time you see yourself in the mirror, or you try on those pants and they're too
Yeah.
tight, or you see another woman and you're like, oh, she has the perfect body, or you see a picture of someone and they're like, you haven't aged a day. It can be so easy to compare,
Yeah.
and instead of being like, God, thank you for
Yeah.
this,
Right.
you can be like, oh, why don't I have that?
Yeah.
And so I do think gratefulness
Yes.
is huge.
It's freeing.
It
It's
is
freeing. Yeah.
freeing. It is, and it can be as simple as every time you think a shaming
Mm.
thought.
About yourself or others, probably. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, about your yeah, about my body, or looking at someone else's and
Mhm.
thinking a shaming thought. God, thank you for my body.
Yeah.
God, thank you for their body.
Yeah.
Thank you for how you've made each of us with different bodies, and we can use them to
Yeah.
glorify you.
Yeah. That's
So,
good. I really think I'm glad you're zeroing in on gratitude because I think that has got to be the fundamental attitude that we have toward our bodies, toward other bodies, and the way God has made the world, even as we see the fallenness of it as exhibited in our failing, flawed bodies.
mhm.
Gratitude. God, thank you. And I don't think that gratitude is possible unless you know God personally to be the giver of good things, which he demonstrated on the cross, right? I think God gives himself
Mhm.
to us. He doesn't just give us good things, he gives us himself, which is the ultimate good, the
Yeah.
good capital G. And only as you see God in that way, I think, are you able to be freed then to see everything else as good too. So, yeah, gratitude, I think, is absolutely fundamental.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were even talking seems a couple weeks ago about receiving food with
Yeah.
gratitude and how that changes things. Like even like a snack or
Yeah.
M&Ms
Yeah.
where it's like, instead of just consuming it upon your lusts,
Right.
just like
Yeah.
greedily eating it, or kind of like, okay, I've had a bad day, so,
Yeah.
but like, God, thank you for this.
Right.
Thank you for these M&Ms.
Yeah.
Thank you for this breakfast. Thank you for
Yeah.
each of the
Yeah.
smallest things.
It just occurred to me the prayer dieting plan. When have you prayed before you ate anything? A
Mm,
prayer of
I bet
gratitude.
someone's already thought of
I
that.
bet they have. Um,
No, that's good. So
you want to close with
anything
that
else?
verse? I think it's a great verse. That
Oh,
James
James
1:17 is
1:17.
a great verse to close.
Yes, I did already mention
Yeah.
that, but I'll read it again. Every good and every perfect gift is from above coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows.
That's good. That's good. Every good and perfect gift, including the bodies that God has given us,
Yes.
the food that He's given us to nourish them.
Yeah, including the, the ability to think about and pursue health.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And how it ties in with the gospel, in which Jesus says, "This is my body, which is for you." And I think that's again, that fuels our gratitude.
yes. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So we mentioned a couple resources,
Yep.
and we will list those out on our blog, wecantalkaboutthispodcast.com. And we hope this is helpful. And yeah, this is definitely a matter of prayer and all, but something we can give thanks to God.
That's right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.